Hi there. So let's begin with another episode.
So yeah, there's stories in the Quran. There are things that God says. So laws in the Quran are mentioned. There are certain principles that are mentioned. There's a lot of different things in the Quran. But if you were to take a holistic understanding of what the Quran is, or what the Quran says it is,
Mm.
the Quran says, what God says in the Quran, that the Quran is guidance.
God's
Hudan linnas,
guidance.
guidance for humanity, and hudan lil muttaqeen, another word that's used, guidance for people of taqwa, people of consciousness of God or awareness of God. So it's a book of guidance, basically, right? It's what we believe the Quran is the final revelation. It's not a new religion. Now, again, from a secular political perspective,
Mm-hmm.
what you see is that Islam, as with other religions, is presented as just a religion, right? So that it's something you practice in your own behind closed doors and stuff like this. But the Quran itself, or Islam, doesn't recognize itself as a religion in that sense. It's a deen or a way of life,
Yeah,
right?
yes, it's
And
a
what's
way of
also
life.
beautiful about Islam, for me at least, is that God outlines that this is not for a specific group of people in a specific age.
Mm-hmm.
This is for the whole of humanity.
Whole of
Everyone could
humanity,
benefit from it if they want to.
everyone, if they want
And
to.
it's not a new religion, it's from the same God that sent messengers and prophets throughout history.
From
Right?
Prophet
So God
Muhammad,
sent different
Adam
messengers. The
Islam.
Quran mentions many, many messengers God sent, some by name, some not by name. But messengers were sent to different nations, different people throughout history with the same fundamental message. So the core message was always the same.
Mm-hmm.
Recognize your
Wow,
creator,
your creator,
worship him,
worship
live
him.
a good life because you're going to
Mm.
be accountable on the day of judgment. You're going to face your creator after death, right? So the core message was the same, but the laws and rules were different according to different times and places. So you'll
Mm-hmm.
see different, those change over time, but the fundamental message has always been very simple and the same. Worship your creator, live a good life, you're going to return back to God, you're going to be accountable. So that's what the Quran is in a nutshell. It's guidance for humanity.
It's a guidance for humanity, but is it also guidance for jinns?
Yes. It's interesting you asked that question. So, you know, there was times in the Prophet Muhammad's life, peace be upon him,
Peace
where the
upon him.
jinn actually listened to the Quran. So there was one occasion where he went to a place called Taif in Arabia. I believe it's just outside Medina, right? And he went and because the prophet's role is what? The prophet's role, it's like the hero's journey. So the prophetic figure has revelation that comes to him,
Mm-hmm.
right? He receives revelation from God. There's a period where he's, you know, trying to figure things out and he's developing and learning and receiving this information. And then he's given the mission of carrying this to humanity, right? So the prophet job, all the prophet's job was to deliver this message to the people. So
Mm-hmm.
the Prophet Muhammad on one occasion went to a place called Taif, an area in Arabia, to deliver this message. But the chiefs of that area, they mocked him, they beat him, you know, you told the kids to throw stones at him and get rid of him, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's narrations that tell us that the Prophet bled to the point where the blood seeped down to his sandals and the sandals stuck to his feet, right? The
Oh.
blood between his feet and the sandals. And on the way back, he was reciting the Quran, and some of the jinn listened to the Quran, right? And we know that the Quran mentions this, that the jinn listened to the Quran and then some of them accepted this message,
Oh,
right? And
wow.
they took it back to their communities and their people, right? So we know that the Quran is for the jinn too, right? Um, like I said in the verse where God says, and he created the jinn kind and mankind for no other reason except to worship God. So the objective is the same for the jinn and human beings, which is to know God and to worship him.
No God and
But
not
again,
you.
amongst humans and the jinn, there'll be those that don't and
Good.
those that do.
Do.
So the Quran and other revelations, I believe previous revelations, were also for both humans and the jinn kind.
Understood. Okay. I'm going to ask you to help me with some visualization here because when an average person hears the word jinn, if they know a little bit about it, they'd automatically tie it to one of ghost
Mhm.
or demon.
Yeah.
One of these two things.
Yes.
What am I supposed to visualize when I'm thinking about a jinn?
Yeah. So it's actually a brilliant question you asked, because sometimes some Muslims struggle with this too. This thing, because when you think about the word jinn, right, and this is not only for the subcontinent. This is the same anywhere in the West as well. When you think about jinn, you think of demons, or you think of ghosts, or you
Mm-hmm.
think of an evil being that possesses. Sure, jinn possess people, right? The possession phenomenon again is cross-cultural. You'll see in different cultures, different communities, etc. But the jinn are not limited to these things. Again, if you look at Hollywood, they've caricatured the jinn. You think of jinn, you think of these blue genies that come out of a lamp.
Right. Because of Aladdin.
Aladdin, exactly, right? So these visuals that come to your mind, but the jinn are far more than this, right? So there are these beings. For example, when in the Quran, God speaks about the story of Solomon, King Solomon, Sulaiman alayhi salam. He was given a certain kingdom. So Solomon made a prayer to God. He asked God to give him a kingdom like no one else has had before, and no one else would have. And God gave him command over the jinn, the winds, the animals, and so on. So and the jinn helped him build many things. In the Quran, God refers to the jinn as builders and divers.
And what?
Divers. People that
Divers.
dive into the oceans.
Okay.
Right? So these are traits we're learning about the jinn. The jinn build things. Right? We know they built things for Solomon. Right? The jinn can build things. The jinn could dive into the oceans. The jinn can also, now, okay, let me just give you the story first. So when you read the story of Solomon in the Quran, there's a place, I think it's in chapter called Surah Naml, where the Queen of Sheba had the throne, right? And as Solomon was also a prophet of God. So again, prophet's objective is to guide human beings. So he wanted to show the power of God to the Queen of Sheba. So they were coming over to see King Solomon. And he asked his jinn, right? He asked the beings he had power over, the animals, the jinn, etc. Who could bring me her throne? Because she had this amazing throne. Because he wanted to show her the power. So when she came here, she saw her throne. She'd be like, how in the world did this get here? So one of the jinn, who was known as Ifrit, so there are different classes of jinn, he said, I could bring this to you, before you stand up.
Oh my God.
Right? Now, if you think about this is like thousands of miles away, and another one, who had knowledge of the book, some say it was a jinn, some say it wasn't, it was just another being. But the jinn have this ability, you can say in modern language, to teleport things or materialize and dematerialize things. Some would say the dimensional beings, right? So they exist in a different plane of reality, and they come in and out of our plane, because the Quran does say they see you from where you do not see them. There is a verse in the Quran. So maybe this is a different dimension, talking in today's language.
Astral plane.
Possibly, yeah. A different, dimension of a different frequency. So these are all possibilities. If you look at Arab history, just general Arab law of the Arabs, you see that it's littered with stories of jinn, right? So the Arabs, even before Islam, when they were going to the desert, they would seek refuge with the leaders of the jinn in the desert, so they weren't troubled by other jinn. Many of the Arabs would worship these jinn because they would see them as these deities. Right? Some of these jinn, they would take on forms of superior beings. They would appear to people, and then people worship those beings. Again, Shaitan's objective of taking people away from the worship of God, and getting them to focus on other things and other beings. So you see, they can do all of these things. They can give us waswasa, like we mentioned earlier. They can whisper to you, and that seems to be the main way that the shayateen, the jinn, the evil jinn, affect human beings, is through these whispers. And normally they're done in your own voice in your head. So you feel like it's coming from you, your thoughts. But sometimes it's disguised in your own voice, but it's coming from shayateen. One of the ways to recognize this is it a negative thought? Is it something that bothers you and irritates you and agitates you and creates anxiety within you?
Oh my God.
And then we're told there's, in the Quran, that if you get something like this, you seek refuge with God, right? Because, we say the battle between good and evil, but God is the all-powerful being. The shayateen, they have no power over God. There's no comparison in any way, shape, or form. So you seek refuge with God, and that's it. That's the way of protecting yourself.
Do you think the flip side could be true as well, where your positive thoughts are also coming from higher beings?
They could be a case of maybe inspiration, right? It's not wahi in Arabic, which is a revelation. So we believe the revelation stopped with the Prophet, peace be upon him. He was the final messenger in the line of prophets, right?
Yep.
Maybe because we're near the end of history, right? So there's going to be a time where the chain of prophethood stops at some point, right? It just happened to stop with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. But you still could get inspiration, and this happens, God can direct you and guide you and give you this sort of intuitive inspiration sometimes about something. You may have dreams. True dreams still exist. And it's happened to many people. I've had dreams. I'm sure you've had dreams, which, a few weeks later or a few months later, and it happens, and you're thinking, I saw this in a dream, or I was made aware of this in a dream. So true dreams can happen as well.
Yeah, true dreams.
So inspiration can come in different ways.
True dreams
So there are these
also
forces,
happen in a way,
positive and negative, acting upon the human plane. And I think the main issue of this sort of post-modern or meta-modern society is that they don't believe in any of this anymore.
Mhm.
So someone said that one of the greatest achievements of Satan is him being able to convince people that he doesn't exist. That's his biggest achievement, because once he gets you to believe he doesn't exist, he has full control over you. Right? But once you recognize him, you become aware of him, the way he
Yes.
functions, then you're in good stead, basically.
Is there any reference or description of a jinn's face?
So there are some references in regards to their appearance in the original form. So, for example, there's narrations that may refer to the fact that the jinn or the shayateen have horns, right? So, these depictions of horned beings, these evil demonic beings, they're not too far off in some ways, but they're vile, sort of, at least the evil amongst them in the original form. They're very sort of not pleasant to look at. But again, as human beings, we can't see them in the original form in most cases. They
Oh.
may take on a disturbing form sometimes,
Oh.
right? A very evil, scary form. But then again, that may just be a form they've taken on, not the original form, right? From an Islamic perspective, as far as I'm aware, there is no clear description of what the shayateen look like in its original form, but we have some references, about its horns, etc. But they can take on very despicable, nasty forms as well to scare people and to terrorize
Yes.
people as well.
Yeah.
Because lower beings feed on fear.
Yeah, fear is a big thing, man. Yeah, fear is, I would say, one of the shaitan's number one tools.
Yes.
Because once he has you afraid, because look, fear, what does it do? It paralyzes you.
Yes.
It sucks your energy.
I love
Zero.
this aspect of global, for lack of better words, religion, where every single world culture has some kind of an occult element. It's similar to what you said.
Yes.
Every single world culture talks about higher beings or otherworldly beings,
Yeah.
other dimensions. And then there's an element about how you as a human being can either interact with those dimensions or reach out to them or reach them completely. I don't know what the global equivalent of this word is, but I've had friends who have, you know what a dargah is?
Is it a place where people go and pray? And
It's a shrine.
shrines, yes. Yeah.
It's actually a very subcontinental thing.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think it exists in the Gulf as much.
Not as much, no.
Yeah. But often, if a person is supposedly possessed, in India, one of the key things to do is to take that person to a dargah.
Yes.
Now, at the dargah, they end up working with, I don't know the right word, but priests of some sort.
Or leaders in the
Leaders.
place, yeah. Religious leaders.
Fakir.
Yeah, supposed religious leaders, that would they refer to them as people that are in charge of the place, I guess, and have some abilities apparently that can exercise.
I want to talk about those leaders, how they get those abilities,
Yeah.
and this aspect of them having, for lack of better words, pet jinns themselves
Yeah.
who help them out with their work.
Yeah.
Uh.
Yeah.
And parallelly, I also want to talk about oracles from like ancient Greece and Rome
Yeah.
who were able to talk about like the future.
Yes. Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if they also had higher beings with
Yep.
them.
Yeah, I can see you made the links. Yeah, and I think you're spot on, 100%.
Let's talk about this spiritual leader thing, because I know that. Pardon me for using these words, bro. But, we had someone called Peter Gray on the show a few days ago. He spoke about magic, which in the subcontinent is called jadoo.
Jadoo, yes.
I don't know if it's the same word in Arabic.
I don't know. My Arabic isn't that good, so I don't know what magician was called. It's called seher. Is what people do upon someone.
But there is this occult element of Islam as well.
Well, yeah. So let's a couple of things because we need to unpack this, right?
Take your time.
Yeah,
with the
because I
answer.
want to do justice to this because
No,
I
no.
think there's a lot to say here.
But you got what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Go for it.
So, okay, so from an Islamic perspective, it's always not encouraged to engage with these beings, right? And the good jinn would not interact with human beings anyway, because the good jinn, meaning those that worship God and live good lives, they have their own communities, they do their own things. There's no reason to interact, right? It's only the evil amongst the jinn that would engage in the human realm. Now, normally they won't engage for no reason. There's always a reason behind it. Sometimes it happens through a medium or a magician, right? Someone that engages in the magic, right? And we're going to get to that. Sometimes it may not happen because of that reason. Sometimes the jinn could just fall in love or become attracted to a human being, the evil jinn. and then they become attached to that person, right? Sometimes the human being may harm a jinn unintentionally. So, for example, where they may live or the places they may occupy, someone may go there and do something vile, or urinate, or or maybe harm them in some way or the other, and that could cause a retaliation from the jinn, right? So these are
Oh,
a few
okay.
ways that these dimensions of these realms, our realm and their realm, may interact, right? But a lot of the time, it's through a magician or a medium or someone that's engaging with these beings. Sometimes it's a part of your faith. You're being tested. Are you going to be patient and rely upon God? If you, for example, dealing with a possession, we know that in Islam, the Quran itself is shifa, which is healing. So you'll see some Rakis or people that do ruqya in
Shifa.
Arabic, which is basically it's like the Islamic version of exorcism, which is that they recite Quran upon someone that's possessed, and it removes jinn over time, because the Quran, to harmful jinn, evil jinn, it burns them, it destroys them. So it's a means of exercising. But even in Islam, it's encouraged to not seek out ruqya as a higher level of spirituality. Again, that direct connection with God, seeking from God alone, not from anything or anyone else. It's that direct connection with your creator. So
Mm-hmm.
just generally, the first point I'm trying to get across is that Islamically, it's not encouraged to go to these people, and there's no need for it if you know who God is and you have a strong relationship with God.
Yeah.
However, pragmatically in society, especially in the subcontinent, there is these traditions of going to these peers, sometimes call them peer babas, and unfortunately, let's be honest, there most of these guys are frauds. Some do engage with the jinn,
Mm-hmm.
so they go do certain practices. And by the way, bro, I'm sure you've looked into this. For someone to get control of the jinn, or to have him as a pet, like you said,
Animism.
yeah, it takes a lot of sacrifice and degradation of the human self to achieve that. Because the jinn don't work for free. What most people don't realize is these evil jinn, they're not going to help you for no reason, right? They won't want something back in return, and what they want is always more than you ask from them. And in many cases, these jinn require and ask people to do some despicable things, bro. I mean, I'll give you an example just as a side point. Have you heard of Jack Parsons?
Name rings a bell. Yeah.
Okay, so Jack Parsons was a direct student of Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley, I'm sure you've heard. You go to any talk about the occult, Aleister Crowley's there. He was one of the biggest occultists of the past, 20th century, you can say. Did some evil, despicable things. I mean, if you look at the stuff he did, it's just shocking, right? Jack Parsons was one of his main students. Now, Jack Parsons is also known, if you search him up on Google, he is one of the founding fathers of modern day rocketry. So NASA, all of these big organizations, space organizations that build shuttles and stuff. Jack Parsons was one of the founders of modern rocketry. And what he would do, he was Aleister Crowley's one of his main students, and he would go out into the desert and conduct rituals, and ask help from these beings, to give him knowledge, basically, and stuff. So he would conduct these rituals before launches. I'm not even going to mention it because I think there was stuff he did with pets, animals in his own family, sexual stuff, which is abhorrent, with his own mother. It's all there. I mean, people can go look this up. It's no conspiracy. It's all there. You can read this up for yourself. So what you see is that these people, when they engage with these beings or try to control them or get benefit from them, they have to do some disgusting things which go against pure spirituality, and purity and goodness. Just evil, despicable things. You see this amongst many of the thinkers of the West as well. Those guys that were pushing on the public end, they were pushing, modernity and rationalism and empiricism and progress and in materialism. But on the back end, they were into alchemy and they were into all of this type of engaging with these beings. The Greeks, even, bro, they called them daemons, right? And you see, they were trying to make contact with these beings, these astral beings or beings from a different plane. And a lot of these guys, so aside from the frauds that are out there amongst people, these peers, right? Though there are some that engage with these beings, and they may say, "Oh, look, this," because there's two in the subcontinent. There's this distinction between black and white magic, Kala Jadoo, and white magic. I don't know what they may call it in Urdu or Hindi, but it's essentially, I mean, anyone that says that they have a good being that's going to help them overcome this, it should raise a question mark, right? Because to get control of this supposed good being, one good jinn won't come into contact with humans anyway because they're good and they
Mm.
know their limits.
Mhm.
They stay to their own realm. So, and also the jinn in Islam, we know they're deceptive. They lie, they deceive.
Mhm.
Right? Again, another tangent. So much to talk about this topic, but another tangent. We know that before the advent of Islam, the jinn, one of the things they would do, because the abilities they had was they would travel into the heavens and they would take bits of information. Because remember,
Oh.
we're in serial time, right? So we're past, present, future. We can't jump from now to the future, right? Or, so we're going through this linear serial time. The jinn would go out of this realm or dimension in modern terms, and they would try access knowledge from the other realms, from the realms of the angels, the heavens. And they would
Mhm.
bring some of this knowledge of the future back and give it to these people, who would
Mhm.
then go to the disciples and say, look, this is going to happen and this is going to happen, the oracles and stuff, right? But with the advent of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they were banned from doing this. They couldn't go into the heavens anymore and extract information. So they had this other ability as well back in the day. So and hence they would inform these oracles, and then the oracles would inform people of, even there were certain Sufis. So for example, in the time of Ibn Taymiyyah, an Islamic scholar, he has a very interesting called the Essays on the Jinn. Phenomenal book. It's an English translation as well. Some of the stories in there are mind blowing, right? He mentions that there were Sufis at the time, certain Sufi masters, who would be in contact with these jinn. And to get in contact with them, they were probably doing some crazy stuff anyway, which was un-Islamic, right, or unethical or unspiritual. And these beings would help them. So if their disciples were in trouble somewhere, these jinns will take on the form of the Sufi master and appear to the disciples in another place. One of these apparently Sufi masters said that when I die, I would come and bury myself. Essentially, it was the jinn that took on the form of him and then buried him to show these miracles to the disciples and mislead them. So there's been many people like this within the Islamic tradition as well, in Islamic history, who have wanted to engage with these beings and take control of them. But it's always a very dark thing, man. I mean, anyone that says to me, look, I'm in contact with these beings and it's all good and it's pure, I is always a question mark. It's just because of the nature of these beings and the fact that the good amongst them won't be engaging with us anyway.
Yeah.
So whatever you're in contact with, how do you know it's not deceiving you and telling you it's good, right? It's a possibility. It's a deceptive nature that these beings have. So you never know with these. And that's why it's always encouraged to stay away from this realm. Hopefully that answers your question. I know I've gone on to many tangents, man.
bro. You answered every aspect of
Okay,
it.
perfect.
You briefly mentioned Aleister Crowley.
Yeah.
What is